6 Coronation Street spoilers. Eileen Grimshaw exits. Will she go away? George Shuttleworth in the back of. Carl is going in for the kiss. It is Dylan versus Brody, and James is again. Eileen Grimshaw leaves Weatherfield subsequent week. However, the huge query stays as to whether or not she'll take accomplice George Shuttleworth with her. 1. Eileen Grimshaw exits for Thailand. Will George Shuttleworth be becoming a member of her? Eileen indicates George and Jason Grimshaw a piece of writing with inside the Gazette which implicates them in a coverage scam. George realizes it may destroy the enterprise and tells Todd Grimshaw. However, who's in the back of the article? Jason, meanwhile, chats up Danielle Silverton in the Rovers, and he or she hides her surprise whilst he mentions that Todd is his brother. Will Jason discover who Danielle is? Later, Jason invitations Eileen to enroll in him to stay in Thailand and to be his enterprise accomplice. Eileen is tempted, however tells her son that George might by no means cross for it. Jason tells George this, and he is taken aback. George tells Eileen he is organized to transport to Thailand and has even booked a holiday, leaving tomorrow, with a view to do a recce. But whilst Eileen hears Theo Silverton telling his daughter Millie that he desires to be with Todd and might now not stay alive, his phrases resonate and George notices the impact on Eileen. George tells Steve McDonald his worries, and it is clean Steve is aware of extra than he is letting on. Eileen later tells George the police have closed the case on Julie Karp's death. Earlier than she proclaims that she may be taking Jason's provide to spend money on his bar and flow to Thailand. But will George be becoming a member of Eileen? 2. Will Abby Webster provide in to temptation with Carl Webster? Tracy Barlow flirts with Carl on the storage to make Steve jealous. And whilst Carl receives a textual content from Fiona to meet, Abby is jealous, assuming it is a girlfriend. Fiona calls on the storage and Tracy is intrigued to listen him say he is the boss. What is Carl as much as now? Abby watches Carl snug as much as Tracy, and later, Abby makes out to Tracy that Carl is a womanizer so she's nice off staying clean. Carl confronts Abby over this, accusing her of fancying him. Abby denies this and threatens to inform Kevin Webster if he would not again off. Carl urges Abby to be sincere and movements in for a kiss. Will Abby respond? The following day, Carl and Debbie name over with bacon sandwiches, and Kevin clocks Abby's discomfort. Carl closes Debbie down whilst she brings up an sad consumer on the storage. And Kev is suspicious. But ought to he be extra cautious? Approximately Carl spending time together along with his wife. 3. Dylan Wilson confronts Brody Michaelis. Sean Tully warns Lou Michaelis that Dylan is due domestic from the STC. And he would not need any hassle from Brody. Sean desires to have fun. Dylan's launch with lunch on the bistro. However, Dylan wishes a low-key meal on the cafe instead. Brody walks in and Sean vows to defend his son. However, Dylan says it is Brody who desires to observe out. Dylan later follows Brody to the Ginnel. However, what occurs subsequent? Sean tells Dylan he has spoken to the university and they'll bear in mind taking him again. However, Dylan is dismissive, as Brody has a cross at Betsy Swain for purchasing him to the police. He steps closer to her and Dylan involves her rescue. What will Dylan do? 4. Tim and Sally Metcalf at odds over fostering plans. When Sally unearths Tim all dressed up and the residents searching immaculate, after which a social employee arrives, how will Sally react? Sally confides in Glenda Shuttleworth approximately Tim looking to foster a child. However, that she's concerned they're too old. Will Glenda assist extrade Sally's perspective? 5. James Bailey returns with infant Layla as Dee Dee Bailey stands company on her choice. Dee Dee tells Daniel Osborne that she is aware of it changed into the proper choice to allow her brother, James Bailey, take infant Layla. However, her own circle of relatives suppose she'll remorse it. As Dee Dee and Daniel go away the bistro, James climbs out of a cab with Layla. How will Dee Dee experience to peer her daughter again? 6. Debbie Webster wishes a reunion with Ronnie Bailey. Whilst her ex Ronnie gives to assist, Debbie snaps at him, insisting that she will be able to manage. The subsequent day, Leanne Battersby thank you Ronnie for lending her his drill. As Leanne leaves, Ronnie turns and sees Debbie looking them. Will Debbie be eliminated from being sincere with Ronnie? Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more movie spoilers next week. Goodbye and see you again.